Hi Bruce.
James, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
Till now.
Yeah.
Let's see how I feel later.
Okay. So you wanted to talk a little bit about Moeller and how that works and try to get a little more density out of the stick when you're playing Moeller 16th notes?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Let's try.
All right. So here's a couple things to think about setup-wise. The setup for Moeller for me is really about the rotation of the shoulder into your elbow and allowing your wrist to release. And so if I do this initial strike, there I have what I call the Moeller strike. Okay. Now after that, I want to be able to not only just get my downstroke, but get some density out of my upstroke as I release and come back up, so that there's a little bit of a pop of the tip of the stick off the pad on the up. There's other mechanical things that I'm thinking about, but we don't want to get too detailed. But one thing is to watch my elbow. It really makes a nice circle every time. So, and when you come up, so go ahead, do that initial strike. So when you come up, let your wrist release. So feel the stick housed firmly inside the hand, but allow your wrist to release. Now, when I say release, let it feel like it's going to drop, but it can't open up because then the stick's going to fall out of your hand. But you want to have this feeling, you know, in terms of your development of tension and release. We want to understand how that dynamic really works. And so when you come up, you feel as if this is releasing, and then you come to your strike, and your strike is firm. Now when you strike, don't let the stick pop away from your hand. Let it come into the hand so that you get this kind of a squeezing of the stick back into the hand so the tip pops off the surface, in this case the practice pad. So come on up again, release that wrist. Right. So now we're just going to play very simple eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now you hear the softness of your upstroke and the stick's a little too loose in the hand.
Yeah.
Don't let it sit too loosely in the hand. I don't want it to be squeezed where you're creating so much tension in your hand, but you want it to be placed nicely inside the hand so that you can access the pop and the nice density out of the upstroke without sacrificing, you know, the positioning. So 1 and 2 and 3. Let me step a little further. If I play triplets, we'll start with triplets first, and I have initial pop, pop, pop. So my first note is a pop. Now it's not going to come much further off the pad at this tempo. Time and space are relative, so I don't want to be ridiculous about letting it pop so far off the pad that's going to throw me out of time. But I want to get a nice dense pop on the first one, let it drop, and let it kind of sit inside the hand, and then pick it up. So here are my triplets. Now, easier said than done. But take your attention to, watch the leverage of my butt into my stick, how it walks up evenly back here. And if you listen to my triplets, they're pretty dense all the way through. So the same thing would apply to 16th notes. You know, in generating a Moeller move, you're still going to get a little bit more of an accented note, because that's just what happens. You're throwing it down a little bit, and then you're following the bouncing stick.
Yeah.
But to get a little more density, you want to bring this relationship of the openness of the bounce and your fingers to move with the stick so that you can add a little more anatomy. When you connect your anatomy to the stick, that helps you to define more tonal quality and more density. And I don't mean this, but I mean, you know, this yin and yang, this balance of how much hand do I put in with that stick to get that nice fat tone, but without sacrificing and getting really tense and pushy with it. So check it out. Here's my 16th notes. Of course, when I get faster, it now is relegated to wrist and fingers. That move is delegated from what Freddie Gruber would call the system. This is an open-close. Some people call it push-pull, open-close, whatever you want to term it. It's about allowing the stick to pivot through your fulcrum point and just adding enough snap. Thumb position is important because you want that to be a certain kind of a post to push against so that you're not using your whole hand. You want to use just really the back part of your hand. And I'll show you this. This was many, many years ago. Freddie Gruber said, let your hand hang, okay? and then he took a stick or put his hand and kind of pulled my wrist up. And you see these tendons, they naturally draw to a close.
Yeah.
So he would say to me, it's nothing more than opening and closing your hand. Of course, again, easier said than done because you have to have a certain amount of housing to the stick that's going to support all that kind of stuff. But it's really, again, it's just this inside the hand, and that works for double strokes, it works for rudimental playing like drags and roughs and four-stroke roughs and all those rudiments that are very valuable for us to study because they give us more touch, more dynamic, and much more control with our sticks. Do we use them all the time? Not necessarily. If you're playing a blast beat or you're playing any kind of drags and stuff like that, no, you're doing what you need to serve up your music.
Yeah.
So, but you want that Moeller thing. Those components are part and parcel to what that is, hand construction-wise. But so back to the 16th notes. Let's just see now if you can feel the stick lying firmly over the back three fingers as they're lying in a bed, you know, firmly. And feel the bouncing stick. And see if you can put your attention onto the butt end of the stick so you can feel it walk up a little bit of some steps. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right? And then what you want to do is get inside that each bounce you kind of sit with. Now, you don't want to start too fast. You want to start it slow enough so that you can really document what am I doing and how does that feel. And as you open that up, you know, as you get more comfortable, of course, speed is going to start to materialize. And everybody's got their range. Ceiling, their range of how fast they can go and et cetera. But I think what a lot of players really get lost in is that they want to go for the speed immediately. Mm-hmm. It's more valuable to slow things down and open up the space. When you play faster, if you've practiced slowly for a long period of time to work on something, when you finally get to faster speeds, your visual perspective of space in that speed becomes deeper and broader. And then you really see the control value of what you have. So anyway, 16ths. And see if you can really feel the density of each stroke. And try not to just wrist it all the way through. Watch this. My wrist and my fulcrum and everything, they act like a shock absorber to the...
Yeah. I tend to exaggerate this.
Yeah, you're kind of sliding out. That's what a lot of guys do. They tend to slide out a little bit more. And what you want to try to do is make your move an elliptical upstroke. So as opposed to this. Now when you get faster, it's going to be smaller. But when you're in that mid-range tempo, I see it with my students a lot. When they initially start, not everyone, but some of the guys, they tend to sort of skid outward to try to get that. And they're not sitting in the extension of the stick doing this. You know what I mean? So this stretch. And watch.
So the elbows goes a bit like...
Yeah, I kind of support,
but...
Yeah, I don't really use... I mean...
stays on and the wrist goes more up and down. And
right, you're following this and the elbow supports the lift. The elbow is kind of driving a little bit of some of the movement at this tempo.
Okay. I need to practice it, but I'm understanding.
Yeah. And if you watch this, just check this out. As I do this, just... As I kind of come up and follow the bouncing stick. You know, that's really what's going on, and then I'm trying to now let the stick do what it does and just finesse it enough to get what I need out of it.
Yeah.
So. Right, you feel the bounce now, and so of course balance is going to be a very important value when you have the stick set up in your hand, so you're using the balance to your advantage. Right, man. And then you can go into, you know, one hand playing that Moeller move and then the opposite hand filling in the space with what I deem or I call as a fulcrum wrist bounce. So just using that wrist and letting it bounce like a basketball. So I would be playing. And just look at the consistency of the stick tips. They're both coming to the same same height.
Yeah.
It's hard, I can't play and talk at the same time. And left hand. You know? So the value of that, again, you know what you need it for because you're trying to serve up a certain thing that supports what you do musically and playing, which is perfect. Everything we develop usually in technique is usually driven by what kind of interest musically we have or what kind of musical situations we're involved in. No problem with that. At the same time, as you're fine-tuning what you do musically, I think it's always very valuable to explore other things that you don't do musically because those things add depth to what you do. Yeah. And when you find yourself maybe moving beyond what you've done, you go like, all right, I did, you know, enough of those kind of gigs, I want to get involved in this, you'll be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And then you'll find yourself perhaps fine-tuning another gauge of technical exploits, trying to fine-tune how you're going to get that dialect for that other musical style. You know?
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James. Right on, man.